Okay, in this lesson, I've gotten the sculpture, the coastline in. It's scaled to the right size, it's placed on the building, and I've also taken the decking boards and at least unified them as one object, which I'm going to rename here. We'll call this Boardwalk, so I can find it. I need to do some cleanup and get some materials on these pieces, and also bring in the sculpture that sits right here, that glass or sculpture, and get the rock wall going. First, do a little cleanup on these boards. I'll isolate them by going to Show, Isolate, View Selected. And they're fairly heavy on the geometry, and really the ways that we can treat this would either be to do it with a texture, it's preferable, because this is a lot of polygons here, or at least to clean off the bottoms. Right now, if I go to Display, Heads-Up Display, and choose Poly Count, so this object alone has 1,748 faces, 3,400 tries. That is a lot of geometry for some fairly simple stuff. So this really merits cleaning it up a bit. What I'll do in here to clean this is probably start to strip out some pieces and use the existing parts as a template. Okay, so hitting 4 for wireframe. I'm going to remake the boards as a couple of large polycubes and show how to map them. I'll pick Polycube, that was Shift and right click for the marking menu for creation, and hold V for point snap, and I'm going to snap a polycube right onto the walls of the buildings and give it a height. And I'm going to make this polycube a height here of 4 centimeters, so do about 1.5 inches worth of boards there, give or take. And I'll make sure that this polycube is down right on top of the boards. And the way I'll do this is by pressing and holding V and D to move the pivot and putting it on one of the upper vertices here. Come back. And then I will snap this down on top of the board, so it's a nice fit. I'll do this over on the other side as well, the long side, and then come back and delete the boards that I just replaced, and then texture that polycube. I'm going to leave the fan-shaped ones in here, but I definitely want to reduce some geometry. And so here's that technique again. Shift and right-click, I'll pick Polycube. I'm going to snap a polycube from corner to corner as well as I can. I can always come back and edit it. And I'll put the height at 4. And then this polycube, V and D to move a pivot, snap the polycube to the top, one of the top vertices, and then take the whole object and snap it down onto the deck boards. And now I can do some cleanup. So I'll pick that decking and isolate it so I can see it. And by face, I'm going to pick a whole bunch of faces here and start deleting. I'll go in a top view and in a little closer and just really go through and blow out all the straight boards here and clean up this geometry. Okay, and there's one left there. And now I've got a much nicer looking fan of boards. And I'll press F9 to check for vertices. There's kind of some stray vertices hanging out here. I can make sure there's a face on there that I'll clean up. Sometimes it's a nice way to be able to see it if you can't, is to go to another mode like vertex and select. So I will press F11 for face, get that last face and delete. F8 back to whole object. And now when I get back out of isolation, I go into a shaded view here. I've got one large section of decking, here's another one, there's my fan. I can combine them, texture them, and really be slim on the geometry. The last step then is I'll go in my top view, and we can see that just from the original site plan that although the building is straight, the walls are actually a little angled. I'll hit F9 for vertex, and I'll pick the vertices of this object, and holding V for snap, let's pull this up a little bit. One axis at a time, and the Z-axis here. I'm going to snap those vertices on. Here it is in a wireframe so you can see it a little better. One axis at a time, snapping those vertices onto the wall. So I'm being very careful about it. Accidentally went into a shaded view there. So it looks like, just based on the original site plan, something was a little off. I'm going to go tight to the building there. And we're on here. And I'm into the next one. There's my decking object, and I can take this by vertex. And it was a little unclear really how it kind of met the building back there, so I'm going to take this decking and simply snap it right onto the entry. Okay. And this is really a conceptual design, so some intersections that really haven't been solved well, like back here at the building, sort of crashes into it and around there. This is a possibility in design for exploration. So I want to make sure that's clear versus really a light, tight, finalized design that's been through design development and so forth. Okay. Now, these pieces are ready for material and mapping with what look like deck boards in reality are just a texture.